Hey everybody, Bob Cicherillo along with David Baye, back with another installment of TLR. Back from Brazil, bro. Man, this... I don't even know where to begin, man.
I saw some pictures that Sean posted of some ridiculous lines, people breathing fire.
Yeah.
They took the expo to kind of the next level, didn't they?
Bro, this thing was insane. I mean, I got to give props to my man Marcelo, Berto, and the rest of the crew in Brazil. I've known these guys for years now, and Marcelo was very innovative. This booth was, we were two clowns and an elephant short of a circus. I mean, literally. We had the Olympia legends in one area. We had Flex Wheeler down there, Sugar Sean. We had Samir Banut. Branch Warren came down to visit. Your buddy Lee Priest was on the other side of the booth. We actually never really had anything to do with him.
Didn't get much conversation time in with Lee, huh?
Zero. Yeah, there was zero actually conversation with Sean. Sean versus Lee.
I was hoping we'd get some Sean Ray Lee Priest conversation footage, maybe a hug or a handshake.
No, there was no hugs, handshakes, or anything even close to it. They pretty much kept him on one side of the booth. We were on the other, which was fine with me.
Probably, yeah.
On the other side of the booth was Eduardo Correa was there as well, along with his beautiful wife Carol, or Carol, as they say in Portuguese. So the other side of the booth, bro, there's a band. A live band, 4 Harley-Davidson motorcycles, a SWAT truck with those guys there with the step climber, where they got the gun and the whole thing. It was like a challenge kind of a thing.
Yeah.
A pole with a bunch of the pole fitness girls, the legitimate ones. You know, it wasn't like the
pole fitness.
Pole fitness. You know, and then there was just a bunch of dancing girls, and I mean, like I say, we had it all there. It was crazy, but
basically like Carnival, except an apple.
That's exactly it. It was like Carnival, which, and by the way, speaking of which, from what I hear, this is actually switching into Rio next year, so it might be Carnival. But congratulations.
Get my Brazilian visa ahead of time, then. I know I had some trouble with that this year. I wasn't able to head down to the
We're going to get you out of there, bro. You got to be a part of this thing. There's no question about it. These guys know how to have a good time, but more importantly, know how to run some good business. And Black Skull was just kicking butt. So congratulations to all those guys out there. Also, at the same time, Olympia Europe going on.
Olympia Europe went down, yeah.
Dexter Jackson winning that one. No big surprise there. To answer the long-awaited question, is Dexter now a 2-time Olympia champ?
No.
Well, he's not a 2-time Mr. Olympia. You could make a case that he's a 3-time Olympia champion because he did win the Masters Olympia, the 2008 Mr. Olympia, and now the Europe Olympia, or whatever we're calling it.
Basically, everything there is to win, Dexter has won.
Yeah, Dexter's won
all the Arnolds, all the Olympias, got the New York Pro under his belt this year. Dexter's gone and pretty much done everything. And just adding to his record, I think he's at win 28 or 29 now. So,
yeah, let me tell you something. That will be a record. I'm going on record right now. That's like the Cal Ripken record, bro, to me. That is never going to get beat.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you talk about longevity in a sport like bodybuilding, where you're beating up your body in and year out. For somebody to be able to not only compete as long as Dexter has, I mean, it's one thing to be competing for as long as he has, and just remain even relatively significant, but to be as winning as long as he has, I mean, is another thing. And it's all these guys competing at this level are genetic freaks. I mean, they really are, and those of us that have been around bodybuilding long enough, we realize that. But Dexter is amongst the freaks. He's on a different level. But a lot of that goes to him being smart about his training. You know, if you talk to Dexter, he's not banging real heavy weights anymore. He's not putting his body under some of the stresses that cause the injuries that force guys to retire. So he's doing it smart, and I think we're starting to see his legs downsize just a hair, and by a hair, I mean just a hair. I don't know that his quad sweep quite has the same fullness that it did maybe 6 or 7 years ago, but he's still
still winning.
Saying Dexter's quads are hurting. That's not such bad.
So I'll tell you this also, David. We'll get somebody to look into this. Unfortunately, Our resident expert, Peter McGuff, still in England. He's visiting some family out there. Has been with his wife, the lovely Anne. They got married, by the way, last month.
Yeah, congratulations.
After 30 years of being together.
30 years.
Well, you don't want to rush into these things.
30 years.
He's pacing himself. Here's the bottom line, though. I'd like to find out who the next closest person is to Dexter.
Well, I think it was Ronnie, because I think Ronnie had the record.
Well, Ronnie beat. But forget about him. I mean, he beat that record. So I'm not counting Ronnie. I mean, the next closest guy
that's actively competing.
That's actively competing, and what you're going to probably find. I'll go out on the short limb here. I'm sure it's there's a Levrone in there. There's a couple of those guys in there, but they're all obviously not competing anymore. I want to know who the next active guy is, and then to do the math and figure out how many shows would they have to win every year for the next however many years to catch Dexter, who will probably end up with 30-plus wins by the time he gets done.
Man, if you look at the guys, Phil has a handful of wins, but he's been focusing in the Olympia for the last 6 years, so it's basically 2 shows. Roden hasn't been competing a lot.
Kai might be the...
Bonac only has a couple wins, but I mean, I don't think Kai has that many wins under his belt. He's got that 2007 Colorado Pro. He's got New York and 2009 in Australia and a couple of these shows and a handful of Arnolds. But he's a far cry away from 28 wins.
But figure this: even if he was halfway, let's just say he had 14 wins. And I'm just pulling this out clearly. You're talking another 14. I mean, he'd have to be competing until he's almost 50. He basically have to do another Dexter, which I don't see happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could make an easy argument that Kai could come out in the next 2 years and tie and break the record if he felt like doing every show. He'd probably make some people pretty upset, make some promoters pretty happy if he started if he started showing up at every event. But I think Kai would probably be the next closest. But like you said, he's probably only halfway there, and he's certainly not a spring chicken. So it's not like he's at the halfway point in his career.
Well, speaking of not being a spring chicken, last week, as you remember, David, we were spending some time talking on our good friend Kevin Levrone and Sean Ray called in. He just happened to call in as we were doing the show, so we threw him on. Sean never short on opinion, which I do appreciate, of course. Had some choice advices, be them good or bad, for Mr. Levrone. Well, apparently Kevin, once again, you talk about a love-hate relationship. These two go back 20 years, and when it was all kumbaya, and we're getting the bro hugs going. Sean fired off a few comments of his. Well, apparently Kevin took exception. He put out a little video. It's actually out on the MD site right now. It's on the forum, so you guys can look it up. It's there. There's a whole thread on it now. But he actually put on in his video, he's got RTLR from last week, and I assume he's talking about Sean's comments, since you and I didn't really actually have too many comments on it. We're just pretty much asking the questions. But then he actually launches into a video from Dave Palumbo on one of his shows. I mean, I know they've got numerous shows over there. But you talk about a 180. Now, I don't follow their stuff a whole lot, but obviously I caught some of it throughout the year.
Sure.
If memory serves, and Alzheimer's could be slipping in there quickly, David, you can help me out here with your youthful mind. I could have sworn I remember Palumbo first saying that Kevin was going to win the Olympia. Win. Not place, not do well, not be respectable, but actually win the Olympia. Listen, you're entitled to your opinion. Him and Romano actually, I think, came out of a retirement, whatever you want to call that, and he actually made the same prediction. Well, obviously that didn't come true. Kevin fell a little bit short. But now Dave has reversed course 180, and now he's just trash-talking him. He actually made it, and I'll give you one quote from there, because I want to get your input on this.
Yeah.
The quote was, I can't really do a good Dave imitation without making a complete idiot of myself, but the quote was, and I'm paraphrasing it, something to the effect of, Dave could get into the gym for 2 weeks and get better legs than what Kevin had.
Yeah, he said he could squat for like 2 or 3 weeks and have better legs.
Come on, man. I mean, what's all this now? I mean, Kevin.
Well, first
off, to that.
We all know that's a very hypothetical statement. Dave has had he's had some knee surgeries over the last few years, and certainly not anything that I'm joking about. But I don't think Dave's going to be seeing a squat rack anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting to see him take some digs at Kevin, especially considering how hyped up he was about Kevin having a shot at winning the Olympia. I don't know if it was a matter of, Dave just, you know, he's a fan too. The guy was, regardless of, whatever happened between Dave and MD, the guy was a good bodybuilder back in his day, and he had his niche with, never the most aesthetic, being a freak. But I mean, Dave's a fan, so I can, but he's a smart guy, and so I can see him, rooting from the heart a little bit, wanting Kevin to win, and kind
That's
of.
fine. Yeah.
But I think a lot of it was, nobody had Kevin winning, and I think a lot of it maybe was, Dave wanted to be that one guy where if he did win, you get to be the first. You get to be the person that said I told you so. And for me, it was, there wasn't a second where I didn't want Kevin to do good, and there wasn't a second where I didn't want Kevin to win. And the whole time he was preparing, there was always a little part of me that's like, okay, well, maybe those legs he's hiding is because he's going to come out and just light everybody up, and they're so much better than what we thought. But Dave definitely, I think, lost a little bit of credibility in the bodybuilding world. And that's, again, his reputation, precedes himself, so he can afford to lose a little bit of, but, in any regard, to see him go back and start throwing a couple of digs at Kevin is, it's kind of harsh, and Sean does the same thing. So,
Well,
but,
let me ask you though, David. Let me ask you though, is there a difference? Obviously, we'll call ourselves journalists. I don't know if I actually use that title, but I guess that's kind of what we are. Me, you, Dave, like I say, those of us that cover the sport, certainly entitled to opinion. Some would argue on any one of us whether we're actually experts or not. Certainly, Sean is an expert, obviously. He's been there, he's done that, he's walked the walk, and he's got valued opinions and has for many years. Is there a difference between the type of critique that Sean was offering and what Dave was putting out there? Is one critique rather than trash talk, and is it trash talk?
Yeah, no, and the thing is, like I said, I've said this before, like I've had a chance to talk to Sean, on the phone, off camera, off record about Kevin, and Sean supports Kevin. He does. And he, not to get cheesy, but he cares about Kevin. Those guys went back and forth for years, top 5 at the Olympia. And so I think Sean's critiques of Kevin very much come from a place of, hey man, you're my friend, we were tight.
Right.
You had a really good run, and you're going to be a legend in the sport. Just kind of leave it at that. And I know he doesn't want to see Kevin. Kevin's still a relatively healthy guy. Sean, doesn't want to see Kevin ending up like Ronnie, where he's he's got to use walkers or in a wheelchair and stuff like that. And Ronnie's a warrior, and I'm sure he's probably up and not using any of the assistance. But, so I think Sean's concerns for Kevin and his critiques of Kevin come from a place of concern and just a place of he wants to see kind of what's best for Kevin. And it really seemed like Dave was just kind of throwing digs. But
Sean says that. Now here's the cool thing. Within this video that Kevin put out is our video and then Palumbo's right next to each other. They're back to back. So you can actually, they're not long. Ours is a little bit longer because we're actually doing an interview, obviously, with Sean on the phone. Dave is just clearly just making commentary. So they're not long, so you can catch them both pretty quick. Sean gives his props, actually, and everybody can listen to that for themselves. They can watch us on last week's TLR. He stops short and he says, look, it's my opinion and all that. However, listen, you got to give up props for the guy. He's 52. What he's done is nothing short of remarkable. And so he actually gives him a little bit of love in there. Dave, not so much. He's just pretty much telling him, look, man, you got no business being on stage.
I don't know. Maybe Dave's a little frustrated with Kevin. That whole time Dave was saying, Kevin's going to win. Kevin's going to win. Kevin's been on stage enough times to know that, when he was 8 weeks out, 6 weeks out, 4 weeks out, Kevin saw himself in the mirror and he knew that his legs and his back weren't going to be where they needed to be a champion, and it's not something we really brought up. And I didn't expect Kevin to say, "Hey, I'm not where I want to be." Everybody was super excited about his comeback, and I don't give two shits about his placing. I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world to see Kevin on stage at the Olympia. But maybe. I don't know, maybe Dave feels like Kevin wronged him a little bit and not being forthright about how he was coming along. Because, when you talk to Kevin, he was, things are coming along good, things are coming along great, I feel great. And the question about the legs came up over and over, and they were side-skirted a little bit. Maybe Kevin side-skirted them because he thought, those last 4 weeks or the last 5 weeks, and if anybody can grow, in a short period of time it's going to be Kevin. Maybe he thought they were going to come back a little bit more than they did, but maybe Dave feels a little burnt that Kevin wasn't forthright with him, and that kind of skewed his predictions. I don't know, but it was interesting to see, because it did seem like a little bit of a 180.
Yeah, a little bit. It's a great opportunity for us actually on the forums, because I like to get the people's input on this. Perfect scenario. You've got a video out there. You've got our piece. You've got Palumbo's piece right next to each other. I want to hear from the fans on the site, and one of them can put a thread up, or we can put a thread up, as to the difference between Sean's, take on it and Dave's take on it, and whether one is, journalistic critique, or verse, like I say, just complete trash talking the guy, and pretty much told him like he didn't have any business being on stage anymore. So it's a little bit rough, but like I said, let's get the fans' perspective. Dave, I don't want to get past the. We brought up Dexter on the Olympia Europe, but I want to tackle actually the lineup that was there, and who wasn't there. Actually, there were some names that were supposed to be there that weren't. Certainly not to take away from Dexter and his victory, well deserved. And there were some good physiques up there. We saw the return of Lionel Bayeki. With his entrance, though, was the absence of Big Ramy.
Yeah, Lionel looked the best that I've seen him in a long time. We talk about it over and over. He's got so much potential. He's got crazy structure. He's got really good muscularity, a tiny waist. But even for being his best in a long time, he could still be better. He's not one of these guys he's turning around and he's razor sharp like Dexter is. I mean, Lionel is always significantly leaner from the front. He's got better detail in his quads. I've seen him at shows where from the back he looked like he was totally out of shape, and his quads are feathered in his front shot. Yeah. And it's a story we've seen a million times, where guys diet down and they get some body parts that look like they're stage ready, and they kind of take the foot off the gas on the diet. And you really have to, Lionel has to diet until his back is as shredded as his front. And when he gets there, he could be winning these shows. I don't think it's a stretch at all to say that Lionel Bayeki can beat Sean Roden. Lionel can beat William Bonac. Lionel can beat Dexter Jackson if Dexter's a little off and Lionel's at 100%. He's got the potential to be winning just about every show he steps into. But again, it just comes down to the word potential. And, we see that with a handful of bodybuilders. Cedric, sure. There was Cedric being there. He wasn't there. And I'm not going to, I think Cedric's definitely significantly more consistent as far as his conditioning than Lionel is, but still that, 3-4% away from just being as dominant as he could be with his size and his structure.
Well, David, we've had this conversation a number of times over the years. Now, we talk about Lionel and his potential. He's got all the tools. He's got the genetics, all that. He just needs to get that razor conditioning in. And you're right. He looks fantastic from the front. I got to be honest. I got him in a solid fourth there. I don't have anybody else, I don't have him beating anybody else. Of course, online, he should have won. He got screwed. No, he didn't get screwed. Look at guys. Even George, I got to give it to George. He put a post out on, I don't know if it was Twitter, Instagram, or something I saw. There's a picture of Lionel hitting the shot from the front. Looked great. And he says, hey, I might be biased. You think? But basically, how do the judges have this guy in fourth? And I didn't respond to it, but what I wanted to write in there was, well, why don't you show a shot from the back, and I'll tell you exactly how he ended up placing in fourth, and could have been lower, because he was soft from the back. There's just no way around it. But how many years do we give the pass of he's got everything it takes, and he's got the Lionel's been around, 6-7 years now?
Yeah, he's been around long enough, and he's just, I don't know. There's, we see this with a handful of guys. We talk about Brandon Curry every show. We talk about Lionel, and there's a couple of guys right now. We got even, and he, for as young as he is, we have Justin Compton competing this weekend at the Frigno Legacy. His name comes up. He hasn't really nailed it since the 2014 Europa. Right. And, it's been 2015 and 2016, and we've seen him really good. But so I don't think it's necessarily a unique case with Lionel. I think we see that all across the board in bodybuilding. If you're a pro bodybuilder, you're obviously a genetically elite person. But I think there's so many guys where if they could show up a little bit leaner or a little bit fuller or be a little bit more consistent, could significantly change the landscape of how they're placing in these shows, Lionel being one of them.
Dave, what did you think of the rest of the lineup?
It tapered off pretty. You had your top five. Dexter, Sean, William, Lionel, and Ruley, and it tapered off. I think you had Alexi, Scherz, whatever. I forget his last name. Califianos. So, it definitely tapered off a little bit. But for a first year show, it was, you had five of the biggest names in the IFBB. So great for the fans. Again, you're supposed to have Cedric and Rami. So that would have topped off, your top seven at the Olympia, minus Phil. So it was definitely a good show, a good lineup. And anytime you get those top, 4 or 5 guys in the mix, it's going to be a good show for the fans.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of shows, David, there's 3 coming up this weekend. You've got your Mel Chansey show, first-time venture for our good friend Mel Chansey in Port Charlotte. It's actually right next to Fort Myers, where I used to live. We lived there for about 4 years, and so I'll be making my triumphant return. The prodigal son
triumphant
returns, my friend. Mel Chansey, he's got 2 pro class now. He's putting that on with Tim Gardner.
Yep.
So, Tim, there's going to be a lot of pros there. This is going to be a fun show. There's probably going to be more pros in attendance than will actually be on the stage, but that's cool. So there'll be all kinds of stuff going on down in Florida. The Kentucky Muscle Classic, that's been going on for
I'm going to be
years.
I'm going to be in Kentucky tomorrow, heading down there. They have classic physique, figure, and men's physique. As you guys might remember, last year we covered the story of Colin Clark, 22-year-old with Down syndrome, one of the first, if not the only, bodybuilder we've ever seen on an NPC stage with Down syndrome. Colin and his trainer, Glenn Ubelor, are going to be back at the Kentucky Muscle, so I wanted to make the trip down there for that, to support Colin. New classic physique pro from Wisconsin, Valentino Harris is going to be there. Bob, I got to plug I'm about to die on you here, Bob.
Oh, it's live.
So. It's live.
Dave's got to get plugged in.
We've got a new classic physique pro, Valentino Harris from Wisconsin, is going to be there making his pro debut, which is going to be really exciting. He's one of these guys where I've had the chance to see him kind of come through the ranks at the Wisconsin shows, from placing 4th and 5th in bodybuilding at some of these shows, and all of a sudden he's winning overalls, and then he goes and wins junior nationals, top 5 at North Americans. So I'm excited to see him there. But Brent Jones does a great job with that show. It's a pro-am, so there's a big NPC show with it. The venue that it's at this huge expo hall, so they have a really good expo with it and stuff too. So it's a really cool setup. So I'm excited for that. And then we have Sean. Sean's going to be at the Frigno Legacy this weekend.
That's right.
So he's going to be covering that, and that's going to be an interesting show. You have some heavy hitters there. Justin Compton is going to be there.
Oh.
Nathan DeAsha is going to be there. Michael Lockett is going to be there.
Good lineup.
Some other good names. Brad Rowe is going to be there. Your heavyweight winner from Nationals not too long ago. Charles Griffin is going to be there. Griffin or Griffith.
Dan Decker, I believe he's in
Dan
there.
Decker's going to be there. I mean, so you got a handful of your real heavy hitters, and then a lot of really top quality pros that are going to be there. So we're going to be live streaming that show. You guys are going to be able to go. It's $2.99. And $2.99 to watch one of these shows.
Oh, hey, wait a minute! Now let's see all the big spenders out there now.
Look, it's $2.99. This is going to be a great show. If you don't have $3 to spend on one show, then I don't even know what to say. These guys. The guys want.
It's a Starbucks, bro. Come on. I mean.
Yeah. But it's going to be a good show. I know Justin and Nathan were really close to each other at the Olympia. I have a feeling we'll probably see a top 3 call out for your last call out of Justin, Nathan, Michael, but you never really know. I saw Michael Lockett guest posing in Wisconsin this last weekend, and that guy,
he's a beast.
Every time I see him, he gets a little bit freakier. And of course, when he hits his back double bicep and his back lat shot, he needs some width. I'm not even going to say thickness, because the guy's got slabs of beef hanging off his back. He just needs some thickness. But when you see, when you stand next to Michael and you see him up close and in person, it's just, we've had discussions about what's different about him, and nobody can really put their finger on it, but he is just an anomaly, and it's really cool to see him up close and in person. So.
If memory serves once again, didn't Josh Lenartowicz win this last year?
Yeah. Josh came in. I think he won San Marino last year, and then
Yeah,
came in
and then
after
Ferrigno.
and then Ferrigno. So Josh started off his professional career with two big wins.
Well,
One of them being the Ferrigno show.
and goes to show, I mean, this can be a great starting point for one of these guys. Again, not that a couple of those favorites here haven't already won shows. But you know what? I tell you what, nice to get that early qualification in. You can write your own ticket for the rest of the year. This would especially help a guy like a Nathan Diasha. Nathan's a tremendous bodybuilder, lots of good parts. He needs some training time in the gym, though. His arms are a little bit overpowering.
I think both Nathan and Justin's plan is to qualify. From what I've heard, is to qualify at this show and shut it down until the Olympia next year.
Not a bad strategy for either one of them. Really.
Nathan, I can definitely see taking some time to bring his legs up a little bit. When I look at Justin's physique, the only thing I can pick apart on Justin's physique, aside from him needing to show up razor sharp, is in his side shots, his hamstrings don't quite belly and hang the way some of the other guys do, but he's still huge. But when I look at Justin's physique, I don't see a physique that needs, improvements here or there or time off. It might just be that Justin, he was dieting for a long time. He was dieting for the Arnold Australia, came back and started for the Olympia, so maybe he wants some time off. But I don't think Justin needs that gym time like Nathan does. But it's going to be an interesting rematch from the Olympia, because I think Justin was 10th and Nathan was 11th or 12th, so they were pretty close.
Yeah, and they're, again, both great future talent. Like I said, I think Nathan could probably benefit from a full off season, if you will, or if you want to call it the Olympia prep. He's got some outstanding parts, but he needs a thicker torso is really what he needs. His arms are so big that they're actually dwarfing his torso. He's a little bit long in the middle.
He's got a little bit of a long waist, small waist, but he could use a little bit more thickness. He's got a really good. His chest is good. He's got some deep striations, but yeah, just overall a little bit more thickness, which is, it's funny when we talk about some of these guys, how big they are, that they need to be a little bit bigger, but it's the IFBB and it's the best in the world. So,
in its own comparison, and this was actually one of the threads that was on this week. That was a great thread on MD and continues to move on. And it basically deals with, it's basically about people qualifying for the Nationals. But you can apply this actually into the pros or the Nationals or the USA or any type of show. When people qualify, does that automatically give you license to go into the show? Meaning, okay, I've qualified, but are you qualified? There is a difference.
Yeah, if we're gonna, the thread on the forums, Big Mike Cox started that one, and that was that's a really good discussion and a good thread, and it's something that we've talked about for a long time, and I've been on both sides of that. And the question was, for you guys who haven't seen the thread, and you'll have to go check it out. Again, Mike started it. It was about somebody placing third at a local show and saying, okay, you qualified for Nationals. Next step is Nationals. Now, there's two sides of the argument to this. One is like, okay, hey, I'm qualified. Why not go there for the experience? Why not get my feet wet, see what it's all about? Sure. And that's fine. And that's absolutely fine if people want to do that. If somebody qualifies for Nationals and their mindset is that they're going to go there for experience and go there to learn and see what it's all about, fine. But qualifying for Nationals and being ready to be competitive at Nationals, that's where there can be a big discrepancy. And I did that. I qualified for Nationals my first time in 2003. I won the Mr. Wisconsin, or I qualified at the Mr. Wisconsin, and I did the USA's 2 years later. I'm like, oh, qualified for Nationals, time to jump in. I didn't even do junior Nationals. I had a couple of the guys that were younger pros tell me, don't bother with junior Nationals. It's not a pro qualifier. It's a waste of your time. So I jumped right into the USA's. And I got like 11th out of 20 some guys in the supers, so I was happy with it. But I was by no means ready to compete at a national level when I qualified for Nationals. And so the athletes and the coaches especially have to be realistic with your goals for those shows. If you think because you placed third at a local level NPC show, you're going to be first or second call out at a national level, unless you make some major changes, you're really fooling yourself.
Well, I got to be honest, and this goes back years. I'm talking into the 80s. There was an unwritten rule back then that you basically climbed the ladder. and I've used many examples over the years. The one that sticks out the most to me was Paul DeMeo, who I knew for many, many years, who's no longer with us. He went back to the junior nationals like 4 times or 5 times until he won it. Now, he won his class, actually, and still didn't believe it. And he said, I remember asking him, why wouldn't you just go to the I mean, clearly, you're good enough to compete at the nationals. He says, because if I can't win the juniors, I got no business being on a national stage. Now, that was a whole different mindset back then. We get times have changed, all that kind of stuff. But it does beg the question, David, like I say, does anybody just have one friend out there? I mean, do you have one person that can sit there and tell you, look, man, I know you qualified. Especially for the people that, and I see this all the time, and you've seen this 1,000 times, the super heavyweight guy. Or, I'm not even going to use the bantamweight guy. God bless those guys. They're lucky to, they can compete in anything they can get their hands on. The super heavyweight guy, he's the only guy in the class at the Mr. Whatever, and he wins. He's qualified. First of all, I've always thought it should be a rule. Unless you actually beat somebody, you don't qualify for nothing, all right? Number one.
Yeah.
2, I've always thought they should go back, and it should be a rule, really, that you have to go. You can't skip the juniors. You qualify at the state, you go literally from, local to regional to state, to junior national to national, and then obviously up into a pros if you're fortunate enough to win.
Right.
But the idea, I see so many people skip like the juniors, and you're right. They got, no offense to you, they got no business being on the national stage. And I mean no business. Listen, you were competitive at least. You finished somewhere towards the middle. You were competitive. Yeah, you didn't win. You weren't in the top 5, but you weren't dead last where people were going, hey, man, what was this guy thinking? So there's a difference there. But, just my own 2 cents. I honestly think I'd like to see people have to actually go through a chain of events to get there.
Yeah, I'm gonna argue with you a little bit on you have to have beat somebody, because I've seen shows where you do get somebody and it's usually at any state level show you're gonna have light heavyweights, and middles. Sure. But there are cases that I've seen with super heavyweights where you do get somebody who shows up that looks really good, and they don't have any control over who else comes to the show. It's completely out of their hands. So if it were a situation where, let's say I'm getting ready for a show in early July or late June, and I'm trying to qualify for the USAs or even, junior nationals or whatever, and I've, put in my 16 weeks, my 20 weeks of dieting, spent the money, done everything, showed up in really good shape, that, to me, that would be frustrating as an athlete, to show up and know you would have won anyway, but not get the qualification. As far as, there's been discussions, should somebody have to place top 5 at junior nationals or junior USAs to go on to the USAs or nationals, North Americans? And I think there's definitely a good argument that can be made for that. The flip side of that argument, to me, though, basically just comes down to a matter of logistics. We know it's expensive to compete. Sure. We know what's expensive to travel. The USAs, for example, the USAs is a show heavily populated by West Coast people. You have your California people, your Arizona Sure. people, your Nevada people, and not necessarily because there's any sort of West Coast favoritism or they like the look on the West Coast or blah, blah, blah. A lot of it just has to do with, hey, I live in LA and Vegas is 4 hours away. I'm going to do the USAs and not North Americans, or I'm going to do the USAs and not nationals on the other side of the country, and vice versa. We have nationals coming up here in just a few weeks. You're probably going to see a lot of East Coast people, a lot of Florida people, and definitely not as many West Coast people as we saw at the USAs. So there is a logistics matter that comes into play with the national level shows and who's doing what. But again, at the end of the day, if you qualify for nationals, you just want to get there, see what it's about. Cool, it can be a real eye opener, but just because you qualified, don't set yourself up for going there and thinking that you're gonna light things on fire, because it can be a big eye opener. Phil Heath won the USA's the year I was doing it, so I'm backstage. I'm backstage in my warm-ups, and Phil pumped up for probably an hour. I swear to God, I think he was just trying to mess with everybody.
Yeah, because he needed it, right?
That's when it got real. When I'm sitting back there and I'm watching Phil Heath pump up, and I'm just like, oh shit, I'm way in over my head. So I actually, the following year, I actually backed off and did like, you know what, I should have taken my steps. I'm going to do junior nationals. And I was a super heavyweight. I shouldn't have been a super. I should have focused on my conditioning. But Evan Centopani won the juniors the next year I did. And Evan pulled one of these things backstage at the juniors where He sat there with his warm-ups on the whole time. Now, there was a guy who had gotten third at the USA's, Robert Hatch. I think you might have competed.
I remember Robert. Yeah.
Robert had gotten like third at the USA's in 2003 or 2004. And when he showed up at the athletes meeting for junior nationals that year, everybody was like, well, what the hell's Robert doing here? He just got, third place or whatever. And we thought that was a wrap for the entire show.
Sure.
I mean, everybody at the athletes meeting, we kind of had, given the win to Robert. And like I said, we were sitting backstage, and when you're standing there pumping up, and somebody like Evan peels off his warm-up jacket and he's standing next to you with 22-inch arms, it's like shit. I wasn't ready for the USA's. I'm not ready for junior nationals either. So you got to be realistic with yourself, but a lot of people aren't.
By the way, where are they now? What the hell ever happened to Robert Hatch? Man, he just literally fell off the earth. I mean. I remember seeing him every year for 10 years straight, and then he just disappeared afterwards.
Yeah, from what I heard, he just, he decided to focus more on family and his personal stuff, which fine. He was a guy that, with as competitive as some of those shows were back in the early 2000s, he was one of those guys that, had he turned pro, he probably could have gone right into the pros and been pretty competitive. But he just wasn't quite there, and it would be cool to see him back if he's around somewhere, because he was a talent. But
we'll put a shout out there for anybody that knows Robert, or Robert, if you're out there listening, we'll give you the shout out. But hey, man, give us a buzz and let's catch up. Finally, David, Ahmad Ashkanini, not a name a lot of people know until this past 212 Olympia, when he was standing toe-to-toe with Flex Lewis, and he held his own. I mean, Flex beat him. I think he beat him fair and square. But it wasn't exactly I thought it was a 1-2, but it was a close competition, if that makes any sense to anybody.
Yeah, when he first came out at Tampa, the first thing I said is this guy's really gonna push Flex and Jose, and then I kind of backed off, and then once we saw him in the Olympia lineup against those guys, I was really impressed. He doesn't flow as well as Flex, and he's not as complete. He's got just a massive upper body, but his legs do need to come up some. And it's weird when we talk about the pros like this, because we talk about so casual, like, oh, they just need to bring their arms up, or they just need to bring their legs. Yeah, and sure. some guys can do that. If they're young enough, they can make these changes and make these progressions. But how many times have we said, well, if Johnny Jackson could just bring his legs up a little bit? And it's like, it's not like he's not doing those things. So if Ashkanini, or Ahmad Ashkanini, if he can bring his legs up to match his ridiculously thick back and upper body, then I think he's got a chance against Flex Lewis. He still has to bring the conditioning, but unless his legs come up, I don't see it happening. Now, like I said, that's one of these questions where, he might very well be able to bring his legs up, or maybe his legs are pretty much maxed out. I don't know how much more mass this guy can carry on his upper body. So if I had to guess, his training and his supplement protocol is probably, pedal to the floor. And so I don't know how much more room he has to grow, and that he might have hit his max genetic potential.
History is not on his side. I've been in this game as pretty much as long as anybody. I could think of few, if any, instances where somebody actually did that. Where something, by the time you get to the pro level, let alone the Olympia level, the chances that you didn't know this or that needed attention is zero.
It was a weak body part.
Yeah.
Right.
So clearly you knew you needed to bring this up, obviously, but listen, it might have been enough to have gotten you there. But the problem now is you're standing next to Flex Lewis, Jose Raymond, Eduardo Correa, Guy Cisternino. I mean, listen, man, it's like you got some work cut out for you here. So if he can bring up his legs, it's usually at the expense of either A, conditioning, or B, the upper body. And this is always the balancing of that. Okay, now you bring your legs up, and now your waist is 2 inches bigger. And like I say, you don't quite have the definition that got you there to begin with. So your placings fall. So what do? Well, you go back to what got you there to begin with. Okay, hey, listen, man, we're going to forget that stuff. We're going to go back to conditioning. You get the conditioning, your legs are back to small. I hate to, listen, just close the door on anybody, but that's going to be a tough road to hoe. And I don't see Flex giving up anytime soon. So.
No, and one of the things when we talk about guys turning pro and growing, you bring up a very good point. It's not like these guys aren't training legs, like they're not training arms. And granted, getting with a new trainer, trying different, whether it be volume training or heavy duty or regardless, there's changes that can be made. But generally, what we tend to see is overall size gains. Like if we look at some of the young pros right now, Justin Compton was a very complete bodybuilder when he won nationals in 2012. Very complete. He had legs, arms, everything good enough to turn pro. Arguably should have won the overall. But, Justin has grown a ton, but it's been kind of evenly. We look at guys like Dallas McCarver. Dallas won the North Americans in 2012. I don't think Dallas had any weak body parts, and I don't think there's anything on Dallas where you're going to look at Dallas's comparisons and say, oh, my God, he brought this body part up.
No, everything got supersized.
It's just been everything. Guys like John De La Rosa. I mean, I remember seeing De La Rosa at, the junior national level, and was 2008, 2009, competing at a $198, and he was still a very complete bodybuilder. He's just much bigger and complete. So, yeah, when guys get to the pro level, if they're missing a body part, chances are they're probably not going to be able to make drastic changes because the reality is they've probably already been training it for years, and if it was going to grow, it would have grown by now.
Well, and the level next to you is outstanding. I mean, again, these are the best of the best of the best. So by the time you get to that Olympia level, it's not like there's a lot of room for error there. You're going to get away with that at
there's not at all.
You're going to get away with that at a qualifier. Okay, you don't have all the guys there. You may get some guys. Equally, everybody's missing something. It just may be enough, or conditioning, which will certainly win out at that level to get you there. The problem is once you get there, like I say, now you're in some good company. There's not a lot of room for error. These guys, we always go back and forth on the boards, the judging and the standards and the criteria and all this. And it's like, look, it's still a means of whoever shows up on stage. And then, of course, there's another thread on there actually right now where I specifically talk about in comparison. It helps to have somebody that's in comparison with you out there. I use the example of when Branch was out there kicking butt, he had Jay out there, which was a nice compliment to Branch. Similar physique in nature. Obviously, Jay, a four-time Olympian, we're going to give him his just due. Branch came close with a second-place finish, but, you're going to put Jay a notch up. But he still compared favorably with him, and it brought him in there to better comparison. When Jay left, it was the worst thing to happen to Branch. Because now he had nobody in comparison. Who you comparing to? Dexter and Phil and Sean Roden? He's the odd man out,
Yeah, no, it's, when we look at the lineups, the 212, I think Ashkanini fares okay because you have some guys that, you don't have a Sean Roden or a Dexter really in the 212 outside of Flex Lewis. If we look at the top guys in the 212 division, Jose Raymond, just slabs and slabs of beef on his frame, but not the prettiest lines. And, he's self-proclaimed the bearded lady of the 212 division. Eduardo Correa, another guy who, his quads don't have as good of a sweep as maybe they could, but his upper body is so freaky. His conditioning is just off the charts. You have David Henry, who's a little imbalanced, but still, to me, one of the best upper bodies ever in bodybuilding. And I'll make an argument on that all day.
Sure.
But in the 212 division, then if you go down a little bit, you have Charles Dixon, who's as wide as he is tall, so he doesn't quite flow. I think Hidetada flows a little bit better than some of those other guys. But yeah, I mean, Ashkanini's not, he's in a good spot because, like you said, he's getting compared against similar non-pretty physiques, I guess you could say. And you bring up a good point with Branch. If he's standing next to a Cutler or a Marcus Rule or somebody like that, he's going to look better than if he's standing next to Dexter and Sean Roden.
I mean, that's bodybuilding. That's why we talk about, how great guys look. We've all been at shows, David, where the middleweight guy comes out or whatever, and you go, man, this guy looks awesome, man. Like, man, he's going to have a shot at the overall, man. I'm telling you. Don't count. Wait till you see. Yeah, and then they bring out all the guys for the overall, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe not. It's a big difference there.
God, what was it? The year Kevin Jordan won the overall was it at the Nationals? Was it 2014 or 2013 when I was there?
Ago, I think.
And the middleweight, I believe it was Thomas Anderson won the middleweights, and I was so sure that Thomas was going to win the overall, and you and Sean were giving me a hard it just pump the brakes here a minute.
Yeah, because we know better.
Sure enough, they came out and and Kevin just kind of dominated with his overall size. There's another guy when we talk about We talk about body parts that need to come up. I mean, Kevin, if you look at the changes Kevin's made over the last couple of years, his legs still need to come up, but he just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And if Kevin's legs match, and he plays top 5. I think he's been at top 5 in almost every show he's done.
He's done all right. He's done well.
If Kevin's legs matched his upper body, and now they're coming up, so I'm not trying to, rag on
Kevin's his upper body.
If Kevin's legs matched his upper body perfectly, Kevin would be winning shows and would be top 10 at the Olympia. But, and Juan Morel's another guy like that, where, he's a little top heavy, but they can still do really good. So,
both those instances, though, exactly backs up my claim. Both guys are imbalanced. Both guys are significantly bigger than when they turned pro, but now they're just bigger and imbalanced. So, I mean, it's very difficult unless you're a master chef, in the gym. And listen, it's bodybuilding blasphemy, bro. But to actually take down a body part, or to, you can't even suggest it because they'll look at you like you got 10 eyes, in your head.
Right.
But listen, if you can't bring something up, you got to bring something down, and that's going to just be the way it goes. So,
but I would like to point out, and this should go without saying, but any of these critiques that we're making about Kevin or Juan needing to bring up their legs or stuff like this, I mean, these guys are the elite of the elite.
Yeah.
Of the elite of the elite. So, when I'm saying, Kevin Jordan's legs need to come up a little bit, that's like, I think Tom Brady's hair could be just a little bit better. It's like, it's like you're nitpicking quite a bit here. But that, that's our job, I guess, But,
all right. Well, I'm off tomorrow to Mel Chancey's show in Port Charlotte, Florida. You are off to Kentucky. Sugar Sean off to the Ferrigno Legacy. So we got a whole lot of coverage. So we'll catch up back with you here, David. Let's go beginning of the week. We'll get some good review on the Ferrigno show. I'm sure that should be really good.
Absolutely.
And obviously all the goings on around the IFBB. So that's going to wrap it up, David, for another edition of TLR. For David Baye, I'm Bob Chick. We're out.